Welcome back to the garden, guys. I know it's mid-December and it's not really a time for gardening, but as a gardener you'll realize that if this is your first year, it's a bit addicting. And sometimes even when the garden is blanketed in a couple inches of snow, which isn't too much for us, but when it is, or a few feet, you long for it. And even now in mid-December, I come out here and I dream about what the future garden is going to be like. So I wanted to create this video specifically for where we live at and any other place that is an extreme climate like this too, for, I don't know, I hope it's a gift of encouragement. But if it's not, well, if you live down south, I think it'll still be fun to watch because it's such a different thing than what you're used to. And we don't have a long growing season here. Actually, the Farmer's Almanac states our growing season as NA, not applicable, because we have a frost risk all year round. Technically, June 15th is our last frost date, which is really pretty late, but we had like 3 or 4 frosts in July and another 3 frosts in August. And of course, June was full of frost, and September as well. So growing here can be quite challenging. But the hardest part, I think, is if it was cool all year round, it wouldn't be that big a deal, but it doesn't. We get up into the 90s, mid to 90s, upper 85s. So we could grow fall crops all year round, which is true, but they need some sort of protection also from the heat. But we can get up in the 90s during the day and freeze at night. So it makes for a difficult growing season and a difficult just time growing it as well, because one, if you're not familiar with gardening, cold crops are things like carrots and onions and cabbages, all your brassicas, kale, broccoli, cauliflower. You can grow a lot of things, which when you move to this area, specifically in Oregon, people will say, oh, you can't grow anything. You have to have a greenhouse to grow anything, which is simply just not true. You don't have to have a greenhouse. I now have a greenhouse, but I much prefer growing outside in the ground than I do in a greenhouse. I love the outdoors. You can grow so much and not spend a dime on a greenhouse, and that's what I would recommend to anybody that's new here in the area. Don't build a greenhouse. You don't need to build a greenhouse. Learn to grow in what you already have. Jess from Roots and Refuge always says, turn your waiting room into a classroom. I love that saying because it's true. You don't need, but I'm going to kind of switch it to what that kind of fits my methods. There's always a place to grow. And especially where we live in this, it's more of a rural area. Most people have a good amount of space to grow. And they're like, well, I can't grow anything until my greenhouse is built. We can't afford to build a greenhouse yet. And so they don't grow anything. But in reality, just go out there, do a no-dig bed, cardboard, compost, plant directly into the compost, and do cold hardy crops. You will be eating fresh lettuce all year round if you do it right, or at least in the growing season. I have a love for the north. The north is where I always want to call my home. I can't imagine living anywhere else that doesn't get a beautiful white blanket of snow in the winter. I can't imagine it. It has my heart, my whole heart. I could even go way up north, way more so than what we're at now. So when you hear Oregon, most people think of Portland. Most people think of the valley. And when I say the valley, it's between the coastal mountains of Oregon and the Cascade Mountains of Oregon. And that is Salem, Eugene, and Portland. And you can grow all sorts of things. I think they have over a 250-day growing season. Don't mark my word, but I'm almost certain. Here, like I said, we don't really have one. But what we do have is 300 days of sun. So when we get those few and far rainy days, it's like glorious to us. Even on days when it's snowy and cold, we still have blue skies. And most days when it rains, we have blue skies. So only 65 days of complete clouds, and that's an average. So some years it's very it's a very, very, very rare day when we get a complete cloud and we don't see the sun. It can be a challenge to grow in a northern climate, but it can also be incredibly beautiful. And when the ground is covered in a blanket of snow, it's just a beautiful time to rest. And right now I need rest. I feel like I've finally allowed myself to come into resting, as weird as it sounds. Before I started gardening, I always thought, oh, fall and winter you have off. Spring and summer you're doing some work. Spring and summer you do work. Spring, you're prepping the beds, you're planting, you're getting it all in. Summer, you're harvesting, you're flipping beds, you're still planting, you're still weeding. Summer is just boom, boom, boom. Fall, I thought, oh, nice break. No, fall's, I think, fall's the hardest season for me for farming and gardening, because you are exhausted. You went through spring, and spring you're rejuvenated, you're ready to go, boom, boom, boom. Summer, you're enjoying your harvest, and it's hot and can be miserable, but if you come in the cool of the day, in the early morning or in the late evening, there's nothing like it. But fall, I love fall. I love the coolness of it, but the workload, it doesn't stop. If you have garlic, you got to plant garlic. You got to mulch beds. You got to tear out all the old things. You got to compost them. You got to put all your storage vegetables away. And there's a lot. And if you have bulbs or anything you need planted, you got to do those. There's a lot of work to be done. And to be honest with you, a lot of work didn't get done here. It kind of got away from us. And I just got worn out. And if you would have asked me in the fall, are you ready for 2021 growing season? I'd have been like, oh no. I was beat down, I was tired. But now, with a little bit of rest, already I'm looking forward to it. I'm still not finished resting, but I'm looking forward to it with anticipation. And there's just so much beauty right now. Winter's my favorite time of year. It might be because of the rest. I love the fire. I'm a big movie gal. I love movies. I love TV shows. Not all in particular, but I do like TV and movies, and I love sitting right now as Christmas movie, all the classics, sitting by the fire, going out into ice skate. So right now I have my family garden, 900 square feet, and I'm in our 14,000 square foot market garden, but there is an ice rink over here to my left in between both gardens. So at night, the garden lights come on, the greenhouse lights come on, and I get to ice skate. And you kind of get to dream about everything, and you enjoy the season that you're into. So I encourage you to enjoy the season, but at the same time, get ready and enjoy where we're in and enjoy the rest. But come spring, be encouraged that life will spring again, literally spring again, and that you can grow a lot of things, even if you live in the Arctic. I always like to joke, we have people come out and they're just shocked that we can grow out here and that we can grow outside and things are flourishing, and people would be like, do you cover all of these? Or, I didn't think anything could grow out here. And I'm like, well, it does. And I want people not to be scared off from other people and to just try it for themselves. With gardening, so many people have so many opinions that are so definite, but there's no definite in gardening. And we live even in a little pocket where we get more snow than even in the front of our neighborhood, which is less than a mile away. It's different from any place where you live, and you are the only one that can figure it out, because you're the only one that's going to be gardening in that plot of land. If you do want to grow frost tender vegetables, tomatoes, cucumbers, squashes, all those type of things. Potatoes can even be frost tender. Regular potatoes will come up and get bitten, go back. You'll definitely be able to get a harvest, but it just won't be as bountiful as it would have been if it didn't have any frost. Sweet potatoes, they are very frost tender. So, and different herbs like basil, frost tender. And so if you want to grow those things, you will have to invest in something. A greenhouse, let it be, or cover. And you might have to get some plastic. I know a gal who had a 6-foot fence in her backyard and unrolled her plastic every single night so the frost wouldn't get it, and rolled it back up during the day so the heat wouldn't kill it. And there's definitely ways to do it. And they can cost money, and a lot of money. But when there's so many options to grow outside, be encouraged that there's so much to grow. If you don't know what to grow, message me. That's awesome. ask questions in the comments, whatever. I will be happy to answer. Or you can even search on YouTube what to plant for a fall garden, or on Google what to plant for a spring garden. Those things in our climate where I live, with a frost risk all year round, or with shorter growing seasons, we can grow all year round. I do recommend having a partial shade. Our smaller garden has a bazillion trees, and it was a big adjustment going from that for the last few years to this, which is full sun. What I ended up doing was planting more. A lot of things would bolt, which means they would flower and go to seed, and then they're not any good. They're edible, they just won't taste very good, but you can still eat them if you're desperate. I just keep planting. Succession sowing is key. So if you plant every 2 to 4 weeks, the same vegetable, you could do radishes or lettuce. That way when your lettuce gets hot and tired and it flowers and bolts, you still have the young greens coming up that you can enjoy. So I recommend always succession sowing. That's my biggest tip for where we live, is to succession sow. But the beauty of a northern gardener is there's not too many pests. There are some, don't get me wrong, but the biggest pest that we have come across is cabbage moths or whatever, which I think everybody deals with, but the cold kills them. So that's the beauty of the cold, gets rid of pests. Southern climates, they have all sorts of things that they have to deal with, and we're fortunate where we don't have to deal with it as much. So enjoy your cold weather, enjoy the snow if you have it, enjoy this season of rest and anticipation for the following season, and get those seed catalogs out and don't go too crazy. I have a tendency, this is me speaking to myself, I go crazy. Get them out and plan and dream and pray over the pages that you write on, and pray over the space that you're dreaming to plant, and let your imagination run wild, because there's just time for it right now, and there's rest for it right now, and soon your garden will be bursting at the seams once again, and sometimes it can be overwhelming and get out of control, and now is the time to just remember what was and look forward to what is to come. Enjoy the holiday season. I hope you guys, I love the North, and I hope that came out in this video, because I can't imagine living somewhere that wasn't up in the mountains. So be encouraged. Love where you live, no matter if you do live deep in the South. You have that beautiful long growing season. But be encouraged in the North to rest and anticipate. And yes, I do have a greenhouse now, and she's half in ground, and she's a beauty. But I still prefer growing outside. There's so much you can grow out here, so much abundance and so much life. The beauty of growing in my northern climate with frost risk, or any northern climate where you have a shorter season, is the things you can grow in the spring, in the summer, in the fall, are all cold, hardy storage crops. So I can bust out a ton of carrots. I can bust out a ton of cabbages if I can get them to grow. This was not my year. Onions, all these things that are wonderful things to put up for the winter, we can grow in abundance. All right, guys, thanks for following along. Be sure to subscribe. I will catch you in the next video.